Howdy everyone, Mario here again, so with another little technique tip video. So this one's definitely going to be a little bit more lengthy and probably a little bit abstract. Today's topic is one that I've been really struggling to try to find a great way to explain. Because I guess it seems very straightforward at first, but trying to translate it to on the wall and explaining the nuances of it has just been very hard. So this is my best attempt at doing that, so bear with me. So today is still geared towards newer climbers, and the idea for today is two concepts: balance and stability, and then weight shifting. And I want to start with balance and stability. So best place to start is what everybody's familiar with. So go ahead and stand up if you're not already doing so. And in our position here, we have two things to think about. I'm balanced and I'm stable, and I'll dive into what both of those mean and the differences between them in a little bit. But from this position, you can stand up here and feel just fine. And then if I ask you to go ahead and stand on one foot, everybody can do that pretty easy, right? And even in this position here, I'm not falling over, so I would say I'm balanced. My stability, all right, you might be questioning, maybe some of you are kind of moving to stay in that position, but otherwise you're there. So let's dive into what's going on with this. And there's a few topics and terms that we need to dive into. So the first is something called your center of gravity. And center of gravity is a point mass of an object. The point mass where the pull of gravity is concentrated, you could say. And if you're standing upright like this, your center is roughly inside of your gut below your navel. Now the center is a dynamic object, and it doesn't always have to be inside your body, right? If you're standing, all right, it's roughly there, but you can imagine if I start shifting over this way, all right, my center is probably going to move over here, all right? And likewise, just the more you start moving your body and appendages around, that thing is starting to change. And as long as you're in control of that, that's kind of a little bit where stability and balance comes into play. The second thing to think about is something called your base of support. And when you're standing, your base of support is kind of this little shadow area cast between your points of contact on whatever surface is supporting you, so the floor in this case. And you could visualize that if I had a bunch of lights all the way around me casting downward, I'd have a little shadow of the overlap of all of those. So that's my base of support. Now, stability deals with the relationship between your center of gravity and your base of support. So when we're standing, my center of gravity is relatively high compared to my base of support. So if somebody pushed me hard enough, I'm going to fall over, all right? But if I started changing my position, so think of a football lineman or someone prepping to get pushed, they hunker down, they get a little bit of a wider stance. The wider stance is increasing the area of their base of support. Their center of gravity is getting a little bit closer to it, so they can absorb and kind of be in a little bit more of a stable position, less prone to being knocked over. And you can continue carrying this further. If I go ahead and kneel down here, all right, my base of support now is the whole contact area between my shins and my feet on the ground. My center has moved much closer to it, and so I'm very stable in this position. Yet I could still get knocked over. So if I was actually completely lying prone, then that would be the best situation to be in. My base of support is at the largest it could be, all right, is the outline of my body. My center and my base are basically one and the same, and there's no possibility of me getting knocked over. That would be the most stable position I could find myself in. So that's the idea of stability. It's the relationship between your center and your base of support. Now the concept of balance, all right, is related to that, but we need something else to help us out with that. And to do that, I recommend getting, if you have a sling or some string and a couple carabiners, something that you could use to weight the end of it, so making like a plumb bob. I'm just using my blade device here for that. And you want to go ahead and clip that to a location that aligns with your midline. And we're trying to get a way to simulate the pull of gravity on our center here. So when you're standing in this position, you notice that that line is going directly into roughly the middle of my base of support. It's contained within it. And the idea of balance, all right, is the relationship of where is the pull of gravity on your center in relationship to your base of support. So you are balanced as long as that pull falls in to your base of support. So if we go back to the situation of picking up a foot, all right, if I pick up my right foot, I'm balanced as long as that pull, all right, is going into my base of support, which is strictly the outline of my foot here. Now I can become unstable if I start to shift where that's going to be. Now I can maintain my stability as long as the pull of gravity is falling over that base of support. And noticing that I have to make adjustments to keep that happening. Now if I just stay in this position here and I just start leaning over with no compensation, once it passes outside of that, I will fall over. So your balance is basically a measure of quality. All right, good quality balance is the pull of gravity is falling inside of your base of support. Poor quality of balance is when it falls outside of that. And there's a bit more nuance that you can get into, but that's the basic idea. Balance deals with the relationship of the pull of gravity on your center. Stability is the relationship of your center to your base of support. Now let's dive into what's happening. Your base is a dynamic. Your base of support is a dynamic space. Right? It's constantly expanding and collapsing. And you can see that very simply when you walk. All right? So as I'm walking towards you, notice that the pull of gravity in my body changes because I'm shifting where my weight is being distributed. Now what's going on there is the following. When I take a step, I expand my base of support. And at this moment, my pull of gravity is inside of it, hence I'm still stable and I'm balanced here. But to unweight a foot, I can't just do that right now. Because certainly if I just pick up this foot now, I'm going to fall over. Why? Pull of gravity falls outside. But let's dive into this a little bit further. When you pick up an appendage, when you lose a point of contact or you move it, you collapse your base of support. So from this position here, picking up my rear leg collapses my base of support from this figure strictly down to my foot. And if I want to stay balanced, I have to follow, all right, move the pull of gravity into that smaller base of support. And that's this idea of I shift over this way, prepping myself for the change, because once it's there, I can remove that other contact point with no problem. No different. If I want to move backwards, all right, right now my base of support is very small. I don't have a lot of room to move without falling over, without losing balance. So if I want to step backwards, I have to expand my base of support. Well, the only way I can expand my base of support is by creating a new contact point. So stepping backwards initiates a new contact point. The moment I start to weight that, well, I've now expanded my base of support from the single foot to the space between them. And so I now have a lot of range of motion to shift the pull of gravity anywhere inside of that. Now that's the idea of when you're standing, all right? Surface being the floor that you're standing on. When you move to climbing, we are now dealing with a vertical surface. And so these ideas still translate, but we need a couple other ways to view them. And so when you're on the wall, your base of support is now the contact points with the surface that is supporting you, the wall in this case. And your contact points are simply going to be the hands and feet. There are a few situations that you can find yourself in. So naturally you can have 4 points of contact, both hands, both feet, and the figure, the base, is that space formed between your hands and your feet and your body. All right? So 4 points of contact. I could have 3 points of contact forming a triangle in 2 different positions, or I could have just 2 points of contact in a single line. Now, as we saw, the idea of stability is how high up your center is relative to your base of support. Same principle kind of carries over to on the wall. If I stay up really high on my hands, all right, I'm really high up relative in my base of support. Not the best position. And there's another way that you can think about this too. Think of any object hanging off of a single contact point. If you look at this, the pull of gravity shifts, the bulk of the weight, I should say, is at the very bottom, and there's no movement at all. But if I pull and shift the weight up a little bit higher, right, moving it higher and away from its contact point, well, there's only one possible outcome for what the pull of gravity is going to want to do. It's going to want to make it move. So when you're climbing, your goal is to shift the weight to the bottom edge so that you're actually hanging off of your hands. So instead of saying up high like this is why we say a lot of straighten your arms. Not only does it help you save energy, but it shifts the weight lower in respect to the base of support. The next concept within this too is, we said balance stems out of where is the pull of gravity in relation to the base of support. All right. Well, when you're in this position here, pull of gravity is going straight inside all of the contact points, straight inside of the rectangle if I'm in this position. Likewise here, if I go with my one hand and both feet, the triangle formed here, the pull of gravity is still inside that. I feel really good. But you can simply imagine that if I'm now in this position, all right, with one hand or two hands and one foot, I'm going to have to make some adjustments. All right, and one way, when I'm standing here, so the pull is going to go straight through my foot. But if I'm on a wall, the same idea applies. Unless I start putting more weight on the upper body, that's the only way I can compensate for a slight change in that figure. Even better, one hand and one foot. The contact points are just the two, and so your base of support is a single line. And as long as I'm lined up with that, I am okay. But if I'm over like this, all right, and I'm trying to support a hand and a foot, there's no other possibility than for me to slip and fall over. Now the final idea that goes in with this is the weight shifting prospect. And you kind of play around with that when you were walking and shifting one weight from side to side. But on the wall, all of these things come together. So this is the best place to really get a feel for this. Is when I'm in a position like this on the wall and I want to move to the right, I could certainly bump the hand. But now I have to think about shifting weight over too. But if I start moving my weight, there's nothing over here to support my body, because what's happened? My base of support is this little obscure trapezoid, and I can't have a lot of space over there to move into. I'm either have to go up really high or somehow stay down really low. But remember, bases of support can change. Walking is you are prepping yourself to move into a new base of support, or to create one. So on the wall, from this position here, I can create a new base of support by creating another contact point. So I could bump my right foot out, all right? Currently my weight is over this foot, keeping me centered. Once I start to weight that, I can shift my weight into this new space that I've created, my new base of support. And so climbing is always about creating new spaces to move into, or prepping yourself to move out of one that's going to collapse. And so to kind of practice a little bit at home, I'm going to have some other drills and some videos that will dive and utilize this idea further. But I think the best idea that you could try to do right now is simply just at home, practice walking around with a setup like this, and watch as your center, and I should say, as your center changes, as the pull of gravity on your center changes as well. You can really try to exaggerate this by taking really big steps and just watching how you can control your balance in those positions. So if I take a really big step like this, all right, I can shift over, but I'm already at the extent of my rear leg's range. So the only other option that I could do to shift weight over more is what? I have to get lower over here, putting more weight on that front leg, because once the pull of gravity is going over that foot, I have the freedom to move that rear leg. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. I know this one's was pretty hard to kind of think of great ways to talk about it. I'd love to hear your feedback on this one, and maybe you have some better ideas on how to explain this to people, or if you're so confused, I'll try to do a better job of explaining it in the comments or another video itself. But stay tuned. I'm going to have a couple more videos dealing with turning with regards to balance and some other fun drills that you can do at home. Thank you, and stay tuned.